Good morning, everyone. Come on in. Good morning. Hope you guys are having a good morning, good day, good June. Happy new month. Good morning, Kenneth on Instagram. Morning, Sexy Sure. Good morning. How's everyone doing? My name is Aisha Chidole, so I'm an immigration attorney. I'm here in Atlanta, Florida. I represent clients all over the United States with their immigration matters. We handle family immigration, humanitarian-based cases, removal cases, some detention work. So if you want to schedule a consultation, you can call our office. Let me just pin that in here for you guys, and then just get right into it. What's our phone number again? Okay, 325-1037. And welcome. If you're a first timer, welcome. Thank you for joining. If you know anyone who needs to hear this, share this with them, or anyone prepping for their adjustment of status application. Okay, so pin comment. Okay, so you guys should be able to see my phone number there. Again, if you want to schedule a consultation to specifically talk about your own case, schedule a consultation, click the link in my bio. You can schedule it directly yourself in the bio on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, or on our website, which is chidolelaw.com, or you can call the phone numbers on the ticker or in the timeline, and we'll be able to schedule it. Good morning, Twinny. How are you doing? Please stay strong. Lots of love from Kansas. Oh, thanks. Yeah, definitely we are, staying strong always, when you have God on your side. Okay, so yeah, today I really just wanted to talk about preparing your adjustment of status application. So of course, it's just been kind of chaotic over the last few days or week and a half at this point, with the initial adjustment. And I talked about this yesterday, how they walked back some of what they said, saying, well, not majority of people don't have to leave the country, but they're just reminding officers of their discretion, which they've always had. Really, the big thing is, and this is just how I've always dealt with immigration, whether it's this administration, the previous administration, Trump's first administration. I think it's really important that when you are submitting this application, you should always expect to bring your best foot forward in your application, regardless of who's in administration or not. You always have to imagine every rebuttal and have a way to present your argument for that rebuttal. I mean, this is not going to be the first time that you guys have heard me say it about presentation, how you put together your application, and the fact that, when you submit something, whether that's, how you show up. When I come on here, some days, like, I just want to be in my bed, or like, I don't want to put on makeup, or like, do my hair, whatever it is, right? But, I come to you, I present myself regardless of how I'm feeling on the inside, right? And it's the same thing when you put your application. You cannot send sloppy applications to USCIS, especially now when discretion is something that they're being reminded of and saying, look at this factors or look at that factors. So to start by saying, if you are filing for adjustment of status right now, first of all, you need to make sure that, you are not a public charge, or you don't have a likelihood to be a public charge. Some people may ask, what is a public charge? So of course, when you're taking any kind of public benefits, or your application seems like you have a propensity to do that, either based on whoever is sponsoring you, what their own income is, what their own job type is, and their ability to support you, right? Because you're going to need to overcome that, because, in dissecting, USCIS's spokespersons, commenting or memo and everything, what basically this boils down to is they essentially want to make sure that you are someone that is economically desirable in the United States, and I know many people say, okay, well, I can't work because I don't have my social security, I don't want to work under the table or whatever it is, which is all well and good. But then, we need to see, well, what is your spouse doing, and how is your spouse going to ensure that you're not going to be a public charge should you be given this? So that some of the things that you really want to start thinking about, like when you are preparing your application, is you want to start thinking about, of course, any kind of family ties you have here in the United States. You want to start thinking about how long you've been in the United States. You want to start thinking about, like one of the things that we've included in our application is even down to, our clients, them and their U.S. citizen spouse. Nobody has ever filed for bankruptcy. This is the job that the other person has. If there are children involved, the reason why one person has to be around for the children, especially if you have smaller children, because we all know the cost of childcare. Some of the other things we have. Let me just bring like my list, because we're just kind of like, I don't care like all the back and forth. Like, I just want my clients to be prepared. So we're just revamping all of our, let me see if I can pull this up for you guys. Revamping all of our submission, because I just want to be able to just kind of like, I would rather be prepared than to have, someone just kind of slip the rug from under you. So give me a second, because my computer is like frozen right now. So I can tell you guys what I am putting together for our clients. Okay, so some of the things that we're doing now, in our applications is, of course, we're trying to show strong ties and hardship. So we show strong ties by showing, of course, family members or how long you've been in the United States. And we show hardship by showing, what the difficulties would be if you had to consular process. So for a lot of people, again, if you're from one of the 75 countries that has a pause, so you don't know when this pause is ending. So essentially, you're basically going to be put in an abyss, basically, because you don't know when it's ending, and that's separating your family. So that is, to me, an extraordinary hardship for people who are in love and want to build their life together, or, someone who's pregnant and is trying to have a child, having to go back, depending on what the situation is in whatever home country they are. Another thing that we're doing. So when I say family ties, we list all family ties. We're listing all family ties, any siblings you have here, any parents, any children, any cousin, like everyone that has status, to show that you're rooted here in the United States. Another thing that we're doing is we're also checking, have you resided with any of those family members, because basically the strategy we're taking is a strategy if you were detained, right? So like typically if you're detained, and in order to get bond for you to be released, one of the things that we have to show is, other US citizens, family members, and how they will be kind of like responsible for you as a village, kind of like a village, so that you're not like a flight risk or anything like that. Another thing we do is, another thing that we're including is financial responsibilities, shared financial responsibilities, in the household, which already is one of the questions, in your I-485. If you look in your I-485, you're going to see that one of the questions it asks you is, what is your household income? So, so even though it's asking that in there in the forms, well, basically what we're doing is that those questions in the forms, we're explaining, we're having our clients explain it, like in our cover letter, just so the USCIS has kind of like an understanding of that household or what they're potentially able to do. I remember one of the things that we used to do back in Trump 1.0, when they also had this wealth test, kind of like economic test. We would focus on the client's maybe educational background from, whatever country they came from, what the Bureau of Labor Statistics say that the income would be, if they came into the United States, like if they started working here, to show that, okay, this person has a bachelor's degree in, mechanical engineering. I remember one of our clients was a pilot. Like, so we literally put the Bureau of Labor Statistics, what the income requirement for pilot is, and, the process of transferring his license. And so, if you give him favorable discretion, he'll be able to get a license. Ultimately, this client, this is from Trump 1.0, got approved, and obviously is a licensed pilot right now. Another thing we're including is we want clients to tell us, if you were required to leave the United States for consular processing, how will that departure affect your family? So so as you can see, we're kind of setting the stage, to show these are the family members here involved. This is not just a one person thing where if you send this person home, everybody will be good, because it's not just one person. It's like if something bad happens to one person, there's so many other people it affects, not just the spouse, as well. And then, we're looking at long-term lawful presence in the United States, or long-term presence in the United States, and just community integration. So it's really important that if you're not involved in any capacity, this is a good time to use your skills to be involved, whether it's volunteering at a soup kitchen, volunteering at a homeless shelter. Like, that was something I used to do when I was in college. Now I volunteer with a group that helps tutor young kids, like, whether that's English or math, like elementary school kids, so just any kind of community involvement that shows that, you're a person of good moral character. Like, so those would be helpful. And then, we also want to see that your spouse, has been filing taxes. We want to see, already you have to submit your bank accounts anyway. So we generally want to see that there's some sort of income, or some sort of money. And again, when I say this, it's not necessarily just for the immigrant, it's for you and whoever is sponsoring you, to show, again, that you're not going to be a public charge. And then occupational skills. Again, these are already questions that are in the I-485. So that's why, I guess USCI said, we're just reminding them of their discretion. Granted, I think that they use that first language to scare a lot of people, but these are already questions that are in your I-485, where it asks you your occupational skills. Now, there are some people that are exempt from that. Those who have humanitarian-based cases, like, VAWA cases, refugee cases, T cases, U visas, on, how, like, when you fill out your form, if you're one of those who's applied for that, when you fill out your form, you put that you're exempt from those public charge requirements. So those people don't necessarily put it, but if you're in any other category, like a marriage-based case, family-based case, filing based on, education, all of those things, H-1B, anything else, even dual intent applications, you want to put that, whether that's you have a license or certification or a degree, but basically something that makes you desirable and says, we need more of this, here. And then, of course, good moral character. Obviously, any criminal history is going to be a negative factor when they are reviewing your case. So the goal is to be able to show, one, rehabilitation. So it's not saying that, if you've ever had a criminal infraction, you will never be able to get a green card. One, they're going to look at, well, what is the crime? How long ago was the crime? What have you done to show that you are a different person? So if you have a criminal record, you really need to really pack your application with a lot of good moral character evidence to show that this is a mistake, this is not who you are, you're a good person, or whatever it is. People who file for fee waivers, it might not be favorable to you. When I say fee waivers, you can apply for a fee waiver. So that's going to be considered, of course, like a negative factor. Another thing that's going to be considered a negative factor, of course, is that, of course, you overstayed, you worked under the table, although it's kind of like contradictory, right? Because it's like, you want them to file taxes, you want them to have all this money, but at the same time, you don't want them to work. So it's a bit contradictory. So it's a negative factor, but one of the things that you have to do to overcome it is everything else that I'm listing, because your positives basically have to outweigh your negative. Again, this is not necessary. I can't tell you for a fact if this is how they're going to process it, since they've kind of walked it back and said we're just exercising discretion. But for me, until we start to see some real results based on the announcement and then the push, the walk back, it's always best to prepare as though it's what it is that they said it is. You know what I mean? And then a critical area is that you really need to be able to articulate why consular processing is not a practicable alternative. This to me is a very easy one for most people. Again, if you are from one of the 39 countries banned outside of the United States, if you are from one of the 75 countries outside of the United States where you have an immigrant visa pause, this is, to me, something that is very, very easy to articulate. You literally submit evidence that these countries are subject to the Department of State consular visa pause or ban or suspension or reduced operation. So clearly it's not practicable for me to consular process. So, you definitely want to include that in there in your application. And then, of course, if you've taken any public benefits, that is a negative factor. So make sure you're not taking public benefits. Public benefits for U.S. citizen kids is not public benefits for you, because U.S. citizen kids are entitled to public benefits, but you cannot take any public benefits. You also, for your interview, need to be able to answer those questions about why you chose to apply for adjustment of status versus consular processing, and if there are any factors, again, similar to the question that you prepared, because I'm basically talking about those preparing, and if you've already submitted, if you're in the interview stage, you want to be able to talk about what factors stop you from consular processing rather than adjustment of status, and generally they also ask you questions, or they've been asking questions about, if you still have family members that live in your home country, and they want, you being able to explain their, what is the condition for those of them that live there, right? And why did you decide not to return? This one, they've been asking this like since last year. Really. So you should be prepared for this, which is, why did you decide not to return to your home country when your period of authorized stay expired? So you really want to be able to really think about the reason why you came here, because if you have an intent, if you intended to never return back when you came here, that is a negative factor to you. So they could be asking, well, when did you quit your job? Like, when did you stop working in the job that you had in the other country? Were you planning to just, like, if you quit it to come here, then it's kind of like creating that perception that you intended to stay here. You never intended to go back. If you came here and you didn't have a return ticket, that creates a presumption that you never intended to go back. So those are some of the kinds of things that you really want to think about when you're putting together your application. Like I've said before, someone says good moral character is key to prove good citizenship. It is. Good moral character is just really critical, because that's really what this is about. The two things that they've basically painted immigrants as, which is that they like to take public benefits, which is really, really grossly untrue and inaccurate, and also as criminals, which is also grossly inadequate. So the onus or the responsibility is on you to prove that you're not what it is that they say that you are as an immigrant. Like I've said to you guys, to me, this is not the time for DIY kind of cases. Like, there's just so much going on, behind closed doors, that you really want to make sure that you're not just listening to sound bites on like Reddit, or somebody saying, oh, this worked for me, or this is because you really, everybody on there is a stranger with no face and an alias to their name. You don't know who is on there, if it's a bot or whatever it is that they're saying. it's always good to consult with an attorney, consult with someone that's competent, consult with someone who's practicing immigration today, meaning someone who is going to immigration court, someone who's going to USCIS, not someone that's a retired. Well, I don't like to say bad things about people, so let me not say that. But basically, you need to make sure that whoever is reviewing your stuff is practicing U.S. immigration as a legal attorney in 2026. Not just someone that's like, oh, let me help you. Let me put this together. Oh, I did it for my cousins. I did it for because things have changed. And, even USCIS officers can't keep up with the changes. Like when I go into the interview and I'm learning new things, from those officers, God bless your hearts, because they try to share with us as well, attorneys. But you want to make sure, before you submit an application, before you prepare to submit a marriage-based case or family-based case, that you're consulting with an attorney to go over your own history, to see what are the negative and positive factors and how you can potentially overcome those, right? So really, preparation is key. So that's what I wanted to talk about today. Let me answer some questions. Anthony says, I have the best on the case, Chidoli. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Okay. Let's see what else we got here. I received a 2-year marriage green card based, a 2-year marriage based green card in 2022. I filed a joint I-751 with my spouse and I got a 48-month extension, but we are now separated. Can I simply wait to apply for naturalization under the 5-year requirement? Your problem is bigger than naturalization right now, sir, Victor on YouTube. The first thing that you have to do is, if you filed a joint filing, you need to be amending your application. Separation is not the same thing as divorce. If you are separated and not divorced, you will get denied for your I-751, which means that you will not be eligible for citizenship. So the first thing that you need to do while your case is pending, and your case is currently at a place where they will probably adjudicate the case, assuming that because what I'm reading from you is that basically they haven't made a decision on your case. You need to immediately amend your case. I'm hoping that when you say separation, that you mean that you're divorced. So you're going to need to amend your application and submit the divorce decree to let them know that you are now divorced and you're now requesting a waiver based on the divorce. If you do not do that, when they schedule you for an interview, a separation is not going to be enough for them to approve you unless you had extreme cruelty or abuse and battery in that relationship and that you have evidence of it, right? So make sure that you do that. Naturalization is the least of your concern right now. Right now, your goal should be to getting that 2-year conditions removed to a 10-year, okay? Okay, let's see what else we got here. Does the memo interfere with the N-400? Marchese, it does not. Remember, the memo is only for adjustment of status applications, basically reminding USCIS of their discretionary ability when they are reviewing those applications. An adjustment of status application is for people who are filing for a green card for the first time. It is not for 2-year green card holders. It is not for people who have 10-year green cards. Also, this does not apply to people. Well, the public charge rule applies to people that are doing like the K1. It's automatically there in the your I-485 form, but the discretion in terms of consular processing, for instance, for a fiance visa, does not apply, because that's literally what a K1 fiance visa is, that you're going to come here and do your process here, right? Also, people under humanitarian visas, generally right now, those are people that the public charge rule does not generally apply to in terms of looking at public charge, or whatever it is. But still, in those cases, I would even still say being prepared to explain why you can consular process. I think that for a lot of humanitarian cases, there's a lot of hardship. One of the things that the USCIS official representative said, was that, we want to focus on our humanitarian cases, which, basically alludes to them not applying to this standards, not applying to this. And again, they've walked that back, but again, I'm still telling you guys just to still have your applications kind of prepare for that just until we see what is common or what is happening at the offices, because again, this is really new. We have a couple of interviews this week, so I'm waiting to see how my clients are interviewed and the kinds of questions they're asking. And you guys know, when I hear new things, I give you guys the information. Good morning. With regards to TPS program and its timeline for approval, do you just have to wait, or is there anything you can do to get a favorable response? Jamaica, there's no TPS for Jamaica. Sorry. Okay. All right, guys. I gotta jump off, but let me see if I can answer this question real quick. What should be the best excuse not to file joint taxes, even if you were married for above 5 years or 3 years? You tell me, why didn't you file jointly with your spouse? There's no such thing as a best excuse. It is, what is your own reason for not filing with your spouse? Many people have had reasons where maybe the person's wages were being garnished for like child support, or like they owed back taxes and it was being taken away. And, because the thing about filing taxes sometimes is that you have the same liability as your spouse. And so if you want to take that innocent spouse exception, you just don't want to file with them just so that you don't have that liability. Sometimes some people have complex businesses, or different entities, or, 1099s or LLCs, where they just want to be able to file one where it covers all of that. So people have different reasons why they file taxes. What is most important is, one, that you're able to articulate why you're filing a separate tax if asked, but more importantly, that you have other evidence to show that your life is combined together and your marriage is genuine. Because filing taxes is not the only thing that proves that you have a genuine marriage. Many people don't file taxes together with their spouses, but what else do you have to show that this is a genuine marriage? So hope that answers your question. Guys, again, if you want to schedule a consultation, do so. 678-325-1037 or 678-233-2170. You can also WhatsApp us, 404-333-8751. If you want to get personalized attention to your questions, we have a team of attorneys here who are very knowledgeable and can answer your questions. All right, guys, have a good one. Bye.